This will last 25 years. This will last 25 years minimum. This will also last 25 years, but cost a lot more. Before I start anything, hello preppers and homesteaders and preppersteaders. I'm going to go into 3 reasons why you should have a freeze dryer and the 3 big negatives. We've had a freeze dryer for quite a long time now. We've actually moved it across country to the new homestead and we use it all the time. Sorry, there's a bug on my leg. But let's get into the 3 big positives. I'm gonna do that first. The 3 main reasons why you should get a freeze dryer, or at least consider a freeze dryer, or if you know somebody with one, to see if they will help freeze dry some stuff for you. First thing, number 1 is the shelf life. Freeze dried stuff can last up to, I'd say minimum 25 years. I've seen people eat freeze dried items that are 40 years old. And some of those items were breakfast sausage, which is usually one of those items that you wouldn't think would last that long freeze-dried. But freeze-dried food has the best shelf life out of any preservation method that I know of. The second, nutrient retention. When you can food in traditional canning, when you dehydrate food, things like that, you lose a lot of nutritional value of the food. In freeze-drying, it retains about 97% of its nutritional value. When you eat freeze-dried food, it tastes just like regular food. There is no difference. When you dehydrate food, it has a different texture, taste, and it's just different. Freeze-dried food, when prepared properly, tastes just like regular food. True, you can eat things like the fruit and things like that, crunchy and raw without rehydrating them, but other things like milk, eggs, things like that, you cannot tell the difference. We freeze-dry milk daily. We freeze-dry eggs all the time, and we use it. We don't just freeze-dry it and put it away. We cycle through this stuff. So it's one of those things like you cannot tell the difference with freeze-dried. The next big thing, a versatility of freeze-drying. You can freeze-dry literally almost anything. You can freeze-dry ice cream. You can freeze-dry cooked chicken, raw chicken. I will say if you're gonna freeze-dry meat, very carefully identify it however you're going to store it in pouches or cans, because raw and cooked chicken and certain meats look the same, and you don't want to find that out later on when you're 20 years into the apocalypse and you're eating raw chicken and you get sick. Things though, you can freeze dry literally just, you can make snacks, you can freeze dry candies, you can freeze dry, you think of it, you can freeze dry it. I've had freeze dried biscuits and gravy and it is phenomenal. The one thing you cannot freeze dry is certain things with a lot of oils in it. And there's some other fatty foods that you cannot freeze dry. But there's a limitation. Like I said, you can freeze dry ice cream. You got to have a specific real ice cream. It can't be some of this flavored ice stuff, but you can freeze dry literally everything. I had one item that I freeze dried and it did not turn out well, and it had pesto sauce in it. So everything freeze dried very good. The pesto was still olive oily and oily. I would put that food into, I'd put it away for a year or 2, but I wouldn't push it longer than that. It's not going to store 25 years. It will store 25 years, but the oil will go rancid, so everything else, the taste will be off. So keep that in mind though. But you can freeze dry leftovers. You can freeze dry like we do, milk, eggs, produce, stuff from your garden. And you do have a limitation on tomato products, because I know the acidity in like tomato, like if you make tomato powder and things like that, it's probably got more of like a 10-year shelf life. And in a commercial freeze dryer versus a home-owned unit, there is limitations to the power. I buy Augustin Farms freeze-dried butter because our machine isn't strong enough to do butter. So I do their butter, and their butter lasts about 10 years, is give or take the life on it. But most other products will last a long time. So keep that in mind. And the cost of doing it yourself over the long run is so much cheaper than trying to go out and buy freeze-dried items. Like I just showed you that little pouch of chicken. That was like a couple dollars worth of pre-cooked chicken that I got at the Bend and Dent. To buy a Mountain House can of one of those is like $40 to $80, and it probably has less chicken in it. Over the long run, if this is going to be your lifestyle, if you're going to have a prepared mindset and live as self-sustaining as you can, a freeze dryer is a great investment. We love it for the milk because my wife does not want to milk year-round. This freeze dryer allows us to store milk for the times of the year when she doesn't want to milk, and we have plenty of milk. So it's a great, and you have to look at it like solar. It's an investment. It's not going to pay for itself in the first year. It might. It actually could, but more than likely it will take some time. So let's go into the negatives. There's only 3 that I can think of, and that's positives. I could go on and on, but I want to keep this equal, so I'm going to do 3 positives, which I just did, and then, like I said, the shelf life, nutrient retention, and versatility. Like I said, because you can freeze dry almost anything, and it tastes the same. I've done blind tests with some people, and they can't tell the difference. So especially with like eggs and things like that, it's kind of funny. But I've actually had freeze dried pizza before. So like I said, you think of it, you can freeze dry it. You can freeze dry a latte. You can freeze dry anything. So let's go into the negatives. The biggest negative is the extreme upfront cost. They run from, I would say, $2,000 on up. And that's a big pill to swallow. If you look at it kind of like solar, same thing. You look at it as an investment in your homestead, in your family's well-being and food preparation and preservation. It's a small price to pay. Over the long run, like I said, even if you bought every couple years, you spent a couple $100s on freeze-dried foods, you're never gonna get as much out of it as one of the machines doing it yourself. And if you use the stuff and cycle it, like if you just buy some freeze-dried food and put it away and then you're never gonna touch it again, yeah, maybe you could spend $2,000 and that'll give you a couple months supply. A lot of those kits that they sell that are like a year supply, it's maybe one person and very low calorie count. So if you have a big family, one of those kits is really not gonna cut it. And it might not be food you like. With the freeze dryer, even though at that high cost, you can freeze dry things that you like and you eat all the time. Especially like I said, my wife has a dietary celiac, so she cannot have gluten. So our machine has been gluten-free from the start. We actually did the bread cycle. If you get into freeze dryers, you'll know about that. We did it with gluten-free bread. So the cost is a big negative, but you can look at it as an investment. You can have multiple families chip in and get one for a community and have a communal one, as long as nobody has any dietary restrictions and you're not doing any cross-contamination. That's another good one. And another one, I always tell people this option, if you know somebody with the freeze dryer, they're not gonna be using it every single day. You can be like, hey, I've got some pawpaw fruit. I'll give you 4 pounds. You can have half of it and I want the other half back. You know, hint, hint. I've been wanting to try pawpaw fruit, so if anybody local has some, it's just an idea. I did that before. Before we got our freeze dryer, my neighbor got one. So I would bring him some stuff or try, and just see how it would work. And then, let him keep half, and it's a good trade-off. You're getting rid of some of your stuff, but in exchange, you're getting back half of it that maybe the other half you would have lost anyways due to spoilage. How many times do you throw stuff away in the fridge because it's gone bad? So you got to add that into your high cost. So that is the biggest thing, like I said, the high cost. It's a tough one. It's a big one. And I always hate that when people are like, oh, people can't afford these. It's like, no, you can prioritize, set priorities, budget for it. And like I said, different segments of the family can chip together and get one of these machines and all benefit from it. I think anybody could do it with the right budgeting, planning, and maybe splitting the cost with other people. It's possible. It's not a huge expense like buying a brand new car. It is like buying an expensive appliance that has a specific purpose on your homestead, but it is a big cost. Number 2, I'm gonna do high operational cost and noise. It is noisy. When the machine is running, it has a noise to it, and I probably have some video clips of it, and I'll try to put it on here, but it won't do it any justice. It's just a loud, almost like white noise hum, because you have a condenser which is freezing, but then you also have a vacuum pump which is running. So it's a noise. If you have a dedicated space, which right now we do not, it's in our kitchen next to our wood stove, we can hear it in the whole house. And it's loud. At nighttime, it kind of does give that white noise, and it helps you sleep a little better sometimes, because the days that it's not running, it's almost too quiet in the house. But it is loud, and it generates some heat too. The pump, the oil in there gets a little warm, so you have to keep an eye on that in the summertime, because when you do open your freeze dryer, you do need to have low humidity in your workspace also. So you do need to have an air-conditioned house or plan accordingly so that the house is not humid when you're working on it, because the food can, as dry as it is, it can absorb moisture pretty quickly. The other thing is the electrical usage. We are on solar. We have to plan it accordingly when we're going to do it, because every food cycle that we run through this machine, it's roughly about 24 hours. And we have to plan it so, because we're going to be running on solar during the day, battery at night, and we have to run it so if there's a storm or potential for a storm, we don't want to have it running because it uses a little bit of electricity, and I don't want to deplete the battery if we're going to have, you know, no sun the next day and things like that. So we do plan it accordingly though. And that's just like if anybody's on solar off grid, you kind of, you know, you do the laundry like now when it's bright out. You don't do the laundry at night. We have an electric hot water heater. We try to take showers when the sun's out. It's one of those things you just have to pivot and shift to take account for the power usage. I'm going to throw one thing into this same thing is they're a little complex. So if something goes wrong with them, you have to be a little bit do-it-yourself sometimes. We've had some vacuum problems and I fixed them myself, but it's pretty simple machine in general, but it's complex at the same time, if you kind of get it. So if you're not super mechanical, it might be a little bit scary, but at the same time, there are so many videos on YouTube that's how I fixed ours. Just go watch a YouTube video. And the company, if you buy from a reputable company, we bought from Harvest Right. There's other companies now, but they've been around the longest. So you'll probably see more complaints about them just because they've been around longer. There's just more people that have bought those in general. And when you look on the internet, generally you just see the negative stuff. But ours has been, like I said, we moved it cross country, no problem. We had it sit for a good couple months and I had a vacuum leak and then I fixed it. So just a couple little tweaks and it was good to go. So that is another negative. The last negative, and it's not even a horrible negative, but it's the long batch times and the maintenance. Not a big deal, but it's still a negative. So the batch times, like I was telling you, minimum 24 hours. One of the things you have to do, and I'm not going to tell you how to do it because there's a million videos on this. If you get one of these machines, program it, which is really easy to do, for extra dry time. You want to program it for like 12 to 24 hours extra dry time. That doesn't mean you're going to let it dry an extra 12 to 24 hours, but what this does is the way the machine runs, when it's done, your food is freeze-dried in there, but it's surrounded in ice. I'm going to go at the very end of this, I'm going to explain how the machine works, but just really quick to just kind of explain. And then your food is warmed in there. There's warming trays. I'm going to go into this a little bit later, but just a really quick, if the machine is done, but you don't get to it in time, it will stop drying and it will slowly, even though it's cold in there, it'll absorb some moisture and it's not going to be ready to be put away long term. So how do you remedy this? You program it for extra dry time. So this way, say the machine ends at, 5 in the morning and then I get up at 6. Oh no, I gotta redo the drying cycle because there was that hour that it just absorbed moisture. You set it for extra dry time, so once it ends, say it ends at midnight. Say it ends at midnight. This way, that extra dry time gives you that cushion. So, I get up in the middle of the night, I look at the thing, I'm like, oh, it's done, but oh, it's on extra dry time. I'll just get it in the morning. And that's a good way to save and make life easier when you have these machines. As far as other maintenance, you just need to clean out the inside. We buy cheap vodka, just alcohol. I spray the inside and wipe it out with that. And then the pump itself has it's an oil pump. So you got to change the oil. There's 3 pumps. When we bought ours, there's 3 pumps. There's the cheap pump that every time you use it, you got to do an oil change. There is the better pump, which was a bit more, but you can get like 30 batches or so before you change the oil. And then there is the oilless pump, which is more money, like almost like $1,000 more. And I've heard mixed things about it. So we went with the mid-level pump, the deluxe pump, and you just change the oil like maybe every 40 batches. Pretty much there's a sight window. If you've ever worked on like old tractors and stuff on the differentials and stuff, they got the little window where you can see the fluid, and it should be clear, not cloudy, not, you know, whatever. So once it starts changing color or turning cloudy, you just drain it, and then they give you a filter. You can filter it, or you can just change the oil. I do both. I usually put new oil in it, and then I filter the old oil, and then I put it back in another container that just says filtered. This way I have extra spare oil, and you know, the machine's always ready to go. I don't have to wait for the oil to, because when you filter it, it takes a little time. It's going through like a gravity filter. So this way I can just put new oil in, filter the old oil, and then have that oil as backup. The oil's not terribly priced. And that's really it. There's not much else maintenance on them, you know, besides checking little seals and things like that and adjusting the door and just little things if needed. You don't need to tinker with it. And the big thing also is read the instructions. You have the machine. Ours needed a special, having a brain, I'm going to put it down below, but the outlet, that one's like this and one's like that, and on a dedicated circuit, because it does draw a little bit more power. It is the bigger unit. There's a bigger one now, but they do make regular 110 ones with the plugs that are both like this. So you do need to keep in mind that. So don't just go out and buy the big one if you don't have a dedicated circuit for this machine. And side note, I thought I had it on a dedicated circuit, and it turned out that it was on the same circuit as our bathroom lights, and we have a heated lamp on in the bathroom. So the good thing is, by accident, I turned on the heated light while the freeze dryer was running, and nothing happened. So I think it's more so as a cushion for peaks on power usage, but keep that in mind. So that will be the big thing on that for maintenance. How do these things work? I'm going to do the really super simple, keep it simple, just simple explanation. So your freeze dryer, it is a chamber, and you put your food in trays, stainless steel trays. And you shut the door. And it is airtight in there. You close all the valves, everything. It closes it because you got a drain valve. And then what happens in there is it freezes your food. So everything gets solid, like your milk, whatever you put in there. And pro tip, don't freeze dry things like onions and then also milk at the same time. You want to do kind of like flavored, because otherwise your milk is going to taste a little oniony. So you want to do things separate, and that's why you clean them out good afterwards. But what happens is it freezes everything first. It gets like -40 Fahrenheit inside there. So all of your food, whatever, turns solid, frozen. Then what happens is your pump kicks on and causes a vacuum in there. So it is just a vacuum in there. So this is why you have to read the instructions. There's so many horror stories where people put in their food and they don't plug in their pump into the back of the machine, and they plug it into the wall. So the pump kicks on instantly when the food is soft and liquid and explodes. You know, you got a zero pressure, you know, vacuum in there. So you need to follow the instructions, very simple instructions. Then what happens when everything is frozen in there, -40, and it's a vacuum, your food trays, there's heated pads underneath them, and they start warming up to about, I think, like 70 degrees or something like that Fahrenheit. So your food is warming, and all the water is getting evaporated out of it and frozen. And since it's a vacuum, the outer walls of the chamber become ice, all the liquid from your food. So when your food is done, you have to release a pressure valve that goes to your drain hose, usually to a bucket, and you need to make sure that bucket is empty from your last batch. Otherwise, when you release that valve, it'll suck up all that water and put it right back into your food and destroy your whole batch of food. So little things like that you need to pay attention to. And then you can open the door, because you physically cannot open the door once the vacuum is set. And then you have the door, you can open it, and then you can just take your food out. And as you're taking your food out and you're processing each tray, it does give you the option for more dry time. So you can close the door and your other trays in there that you're not ready for yet, it'll just keep drying them. And then you can process your trays of food and then go in there and get your next tray, come back and do that. And then once it's done, you can do, there's a thing for defrost where it'll run and it'll do something. Just leave the door open, hit no defrost, and then turn the power off. It doesn't use any power. It defrosts just as fast. And if you want to speed it up, you can take a fan and just put a little fan and just blow air into there and it'll defrost really quick, much quicker than the defrost setting on there. And that's it. It's a simple thing like that. And for our homestead, it has just been phenomenal. We use it all the time. You know, I make camping meals. We put our milk away, that, you know, like things that we use all the time, vegetables, mixes for soups, just anything you can think of. It's just super handy because nothing stores as well as freeze-dried stuff. You know, you talk to a lot of people too, and they're like, oh yeah, I freeze-dry, and they're always thinking dehydrated. And they're like, oh, I don't like, I don't like freeze-dried. And they're like, no, you're thinking dehydrated. Most people get the two mixed up, and there is a big difference. Dehydrating, you just take a lot of the moisture out, but there's still like 20% moisture left in things. Good example, we went to Sam's Club on our quarterly or half a year trip there, because it's a 2-hour drive. And they had dried fruit. They had freeze-dried fruit, like mangoes. And then they had dried mangoes. And the freeze-dried fruit, you can feel the package, it's like it comes out like styrofoam. That's how freeze-dried stuff comes out, literally like styrofoam, because it's so dry. The mangoes were still flexible, and they looked tacky and kind of wet. And the mangoes were on clearance, because they don't last as long, and people probably thought and were expecting the freeze-dried, because for snacks, people like the freeze-dried fruit. So hopefully this was helpful. Like I said, I know it's a big cost for your homestead, but if you think about it as an investment like solar and just not a need, but a potential, for us it was a need and it's paid off, but it's one of those, like I said, I get that and nobody knows it more than me now that literally my income has dropped a huge percentage, but it's one of those things. It was easier for us to buy when I was working and Jenny was working. We were both working. It was a much easier purchase to make. But it's one of those things too, like I said, you could look out for sales. They do all kinds of, any holiday they're gonna do some kind of a sale on it. And like I said, if you're local and you have something I wanna try, maybe I'll do it and just do a batch for you just so you can try it out. Because like I said, I've been really wanting to try pawpaw fruit because people are telling me that it's tropical custard, like kind of like a banana or like a mango, and I'm like, ooh, that sounds really good. And it probably will freeze-dry. And that's another thing. If you go to the freeze-dried vendors that sell freeze-dried stuff like Mountain House, Peak Refuel, things like that, they got a lot of good stuff, but they don't have everything. And there's probably foods that you like that you will never be able to find freeze-dried that you can just freeze-dry yourself. So that is another positive on the freeze-dryer side, that there's lots of custom things you can do, especially if you have dietary restrictions. The sky's the limit on what you can do. So hopefully that was helpful. I feel bad for the people up north because I don't know if you can see, but I'm in shorts, and I know a lot of people got snow today, so it's kind of funny. The weather's just been phenomenal here as usual. And we did get some rain, so you're probably noticing that the mountain views are going to be gone soon, and the green is coming in slowly and just filling in everything. So we did an awesome hike. Lost Valley. It's just a great hike near Ponca, just to enjoy some of this weather before the ticks come out and the snakes. Unfortunately, we had our dog got a friend's dog was here, got a snake on the property, and it was luckily it wasn't a poisonous snake, but sadly it was a rat snake, which we could use out here because of all the little critters running around. So, but other than that, I got a lot of work to do, so I'm gonna let you go. hopefully this is helpful. If you got any questions on freeze drying, ask away. We've owned it long enough that I feel pretty confident in helping you on a decision. Any questions, concerns, any negatives? And we did buy the freeze dryer ourselves. We didn't get a sponsorship or nothing like that. We've had it a long time. The big thing was because of freeze-dried goat's milk. We tried freezing it, we tried canning it, and the texture was just kind of gross. So freeze-drying it tastes just like fresh milk. We've drank so much freeze-dried milk and it tastes nothing like powdered milk or like Parmaloft, any of those like weird off things that you can get. So, and the other good thing is you know where the food's coming from since you're putting it in there. So, versus the cans of freeze-dried stuff. More than likely, those canned freeze-dried stuff, it's the cheapest stuff they can get usually, and they just put it in there. So, there. So hopefully that was helpful. Thanks again, and until next time. Thanks again. Bye. Till next time. Bye. Big camera. I'm still waiting for the temperature in my water to be perfect. It's still warming up. I'm gonna end it there. Thanks. Like and subscribe. I gotta support this shirt because it was a gift. I love it. I do. So thanks again. Bye.